getting to the awards, I want to salute who works with Danny at Airbnb, Janae Ingram, who was our executive director, and she's gone on to be, she headed logistics for the Women's March, and we're proud of her leadership. Janae, wave at the folk. You used to be in the back with it, moving us around. Congressman Al Green of Houston, Texas, is a poetic orator and a man of vision. And he said, I want to just come, Reverend, and be with y'all. But I said, you can't leave without giving us at least 2 or 3 minutes of your words. Because he is one that has always stood with us, has fought for us, and has led the fight to impeach y'all's president. May we hear from the congressman from Houston, Texas, Congressman Al Green.
Thank you, Reverend. I promise you, I won't be long, but I will be strong. I am Al Green, and I am a liberated Democrat. A liberated Democrat not only speaks truth to power, a liberated Democrat speaks truth about power. And I want to speak truth about power today such that it is perspicuously clear as to where I stand. I don't believe that we would allow an African-American president to say some of the things that have been said and stay in the White House. It is my opinion that if President Obama had said something about the mothers of African-American football players, if he had said something about certain countries and called them S-holes, it is my opinion that he would not only be out of the White House, he'd probably be in jail. I said I am a liberated Democrat. I believe that when the president steps over the line, somebody ought to stand up. I am that person. I am not afraid. I have no fear. I will do what has to be done. And I will tell you right now, if President Obama makes another racial slur, I'm going to move to impeach him again because he has earned the right to be impeached. Reverend, did I say Obama? Well, as you can see, a liberated Democrat can get carried away. Now, let me just say this quickly. Dr. King is no longer with us. He made his transition some 50 years ago. But friends, thank you. But friends, he left the movement in good hands. He left the movement in good hands because he did push for civil rights. But we now have some champions who are pushing farther into the movement, and they are pushing for civil rights. So I'm honored to be on this platform today with someone who has been pushing for these civil rights with Dr. King and since Dr. King, and it's my honor to be here with the Honorable Jesse Jackson. So let's give him an expression of love, please. Show him some love, please. And I'm honored to be here with the president of NAN, a man that I have great respect for. His name is Sharpton. And I say to you, he is Sharpton because he has a sharp tongue. I enjoy seeing him tie those others in knots on his program. So I'm honored to be here with him, and I know you've given him many expressions of love, but let's give Pastor and Reverend Al Sharpton a big expression of love, please. And I also want you to know this, great people always rise to the occasion, but they tell me it takes even greater people to make the occasion. So I want you to know that you are the occasion makers, and you deserve to be acknowledged for what you do, to stand behind, to stand with, to be the shoulders that we stand on. Let's hear it for NAN, the National Action Network, and what you do. And as I go to my seat, I want to remind us of this. If we want to do something about the problems that we have, there are some things that I can do and we can do in Congress. One of the things that we can do is raise the minimum wage. It is time to raise the wage. It ought to be a living wage. It ought to be $15, but if I had my way, it would be $20. We need to raise the wage. We had a man in this country to make $3 billion one year. For edification purposes, $3 billion at $7.25 an hour. It would take a minimum wage worker 198,000 years to make $3 billion. We owe it to ourselves to make sure every person makes a wage such that he can take care of his family or her family. We can raise the wage. We just have to demand that Congress do it. You are the people who can get it done. Help me to raise the wage. I believe that we have a duty and a responsibility to do something about the banks who are ripping us off. I believe that these banks who make it their business to make loans that are higher in percentage of interest rate to African Americans than they are to others. There is something that was called the yield spread premium. Quickly to tell you, it allowed a loan to be made and the person making the loan could qualify you for 5% and then come out and shake your hand and tell you good news. You qualified for a 10% loan. And that spread he was able to split with the lender. It was called the yield spread premium. We eliminated that in Dodd-Frank. But there's those who want to bring Dodd-Frank back. And we've got to fight to protect Dodd-Frank and prevent the yield spread premium. So here's what I'm doing in Congress on this. I believe that people who discriminate in lending ought to go to jail. I am introducing a bill to make it a crime to discriminate in lending. It is like stealing. It is like theft of any other kind. And if you're going to steal, you ought to get prosecuted the same way people who steal in convenience stores, people who steal on the streets. Let's put them in jail when they steal from us. Let's protect our wealth. And Reverend Jackson, I want to say this to you as I go. I know this is a tough sell, putting people in jail for discriminating and lending. But it was also a tough sell for some of the things that you've done through the years. And you made it possible for us to have the opportunity to make these tough sales. So, Reverend, thank you for what you have done through the years. God bless you. Pastor Vivian, thank you. Sister Zenona, thank you. And of course, Reverend, I thank you. And to my Senator Cory Booker, thank you as well. God bless you, everybody. Thank you.
We want to, as we start the awards part, I want to acknowledge also Congressman, is he still here, Congressman G.K. Butterfield. Give him a hand from North Carolina. Have a seat over here next to Al Green. All right, we are, let me say that as we go into our awards party, we all are going to be brief because I know I've held up overtime. But this is about honoring those that brought us this far. First, we want to give a friendship award. Our partnership award. Last year, we called on 1,000 ministers to march with us in Washington. We ended up with over 5,000 coming, 300 of them rabbis. And we want to recognize that that was not done just by some automatic, but done with real diligence by the Religious Action Center. And I want to ask Rabbi Sally J. Prasan to come forward as we present her for the Religious Action Center, the Partnership Award of National Action Network. Jenny, come on, you gotta help us present this award. This is the William A. Jones Jr. Memorial Luncheon Partnership Award.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the warm and gracious welcome that we have received. I and my colleagues are grateful to be here to represent the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism. Our director, Rabbi Jonah Pesner, sends his regrets and his greetings. He had a long-standing commitment that he couldn't break. I noticed that this award is called the Partnership Award. And our partnership has been renewed in recent days, but I think it's important to remember that it is long-standing. And even before Martin Luther King Jr. had his friendship with Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, Rabbi Joachim Prince, there were others in whose footsteps we follow, such as Rabbi Stephen Wise, who was a founder of the NAACP, and Kimmy Kaplan, who made possible our Religious Action Center, a place in Washington where much of the modern civil rights legislation was actually written. So we've been partners for a long time, and I want to pledge to you that we're going to continue to be partners because we have a lot of work to do. And there has never been a more urgent time here in America when we have to work together and follow that biblical command, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. So let's get out and get everybody registered to vote. Let's make certain that they can get to the polls on the day when it counts. And let's follow our young people who in recent weeks have shown so much courage and leadership. We thank you very, very much, and we look forward to working together in the future.
Give another hand, Rabbi Prasan, who represents the Religious Action Center, our partners, the National Action Network, March. The midterm elections are vital. Our churches need to fight for automatic voter registration. We raised it with the governor here. There are still several states that don't do that. And we need to be pushing votes out. If it seems like because of all of the 2020 prospective people that have come through this last 2 days, and several senators this morning, that we're laying heavy on the ministers, we are. I intend to lay heavy. And to make sure that you got the real message, we got the Queen of the House of Representatives to come up. Because if y'all vote, she will go from minority leader to the speaker. And we know if she becomes speaker, we will have somebody that will speak on behalf of us. I want to bring to you the minority leader of the House of Representatives and the next speaker of the House of Representatives, if we do the right thing, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi.
For your kind welcome. I'm honored to be here with all of you, certainly with my colleagues, Mr. Butterfield, Congressman Butterfield of North Carolina, he's going to produce some victories there. And Congressman Al Green, forgive me for a moment of politics there for a second, Congressman Al Green of Texas, where we're going to win some seats as well. Thank you so much, Reverend Sharpton, for the invitation to share some thoughts with you this afternoon. I'm honored to be here and to help you recognize the work of Religious Action Center for Reform Judaism. The rabbi spoke so beautifully. And Reverend Vivian, founder of the Vivian Leadership Institute, Zermana Clayton, President and CEO of Trumpet Awards Foundation, and Reverend Jesse Jackson. He's getting an award too. That's wonderful. And I'm glad to be here with Jennifer Jones, Austin, daughter of Dr. William Jones, as we pay tribute to him in the name of this occasion, but in referencing his great work. So mostly your religious leaders in this room. Oh, there you are, Jesse. I was looking for you. Here's what I want to share a few thoughts with you in the spirit of religion. And just following up on what Rabbi said about justice. And that's what this is about. Dr. King was about justice, and Reverend Jones about justice. 17 centuries ago, 1700 years ago, St. Augustine said, any government that is not formed to promote justice is just a bunch of thieves. Pope Benedict wrote that in his first encyclical, God is Love. And he writes about his favorite saint, St. Augustine. Just a bunch of thieves if you're not promoting justice. So Benedict goes on to say, sometimes it's hard to define exactly what justice is, but in doing so we must beware of the dazzling blindness of money, power, and special interest. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? So any justice that we're fighting for, whether it's economic justice, environmental justice, legal justice, any subject that you can name, really, we have to have our shared values of promoting justice to be our clarion call. And that's faith-based, because in our faith we believe, and our founders did too, that all people are created equal, but we believe that there is a spark of divinity in every person, and that we must act in a way that respects that spark of divinity, including the spark of divinity in ourselves, so that we know what our responsibility is to other people. And so it's curious for me to be serving with some people who are very prayerful, on church on Sunday, and I say to them, you just must not pray in church on Sunday and prey on people the rest of the week. That's it. Because that's not about justice. That's not about justice. And so when we're talking about what is one of the reflections of justice for us is a statement of our values, which is our budget. What is important to us as a nation should be reflected in our budget, our federal budget, how we invest in people, their dignity and worth, the founders' view of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that we're all created equal. Thank God they made the Constitution amendable, so we could be really much better in terms of being. But when we have a situation, prayerfully, not politically and not partisanly, but just making a judgment about a budget, a tax plan, that says we're going to give we're going to increase the national debt by over $2 trillion, so we can give $1.5 trillion tax cut to corporate America. But we have to pay for it, so we'll take $1 trillion out of Medicaid, $500 billion out of Medicare, $200 billion out of food stamps, $200 billion out of education for our children, especially in economically deprived areas. What are we talking about here? It's not a statement of our values as a country. 2/3 of the people who are served by Medicaid, 2/3 of them are poor children. 2/3 of the money in Medicaid is spent on long-term care for our seniors. So the money is more for the seniors, more of a middle and low-income benefit, the smaller amount of money, but larger number of people, poor children. So they want to cut that. How about food stamps? How about food stamps? Food on the table, they go on the floor and they say, God wanted people to work, and they can't eat unless they work. What? God wanted little babies and children to go to work. I mean, what are we talking about here? So again, this is bigger than politics. It's bigger than Democrats and Republicans. It's about our values as a country and how we cannot let people think that anybody else is less worthy than anybody else. Whether it comes to the air people breathe in communities, environmental justice, clean water in communities. We believe that this planet is God's creation and we have a moral responsibility to be good stewards of it. Well, maybe where they live, but not where other people live. That's wrong. That's wrong. So I want to salute you. I want to salute Reverend Sharpton for his ongoing, persistent dedication over a long period of time to justice, dignity, and opportunity, the framework of the National Action Network. We celebrated this past, we observed, I don't want to use the word, observed this month, the passing of Dr. King. Dr. King had something to say about everything that was perfect. Right? Was it not perfect? When we talk about health care, access to health care, he said of all the forms of inequality, the most stunning and cruel is inequality in health care because people can die. When we talk about the budget and economic inequality, he said, I do not believe that God intended for some people to live in superfluous, huge wealth while others lived in abject poverty. You know the list goes on and on. But he also said, taking it to an action place, the ballot, the ballot, the ballot. Legislation, legislation, legislation. Your life, your life, your life. He appealed to all of us to see the connection between what happens at the ballot box and whoever wins, what that means in legislation and what that means in people's lives. So we have a moment in time now. I mean, nobody's ever said this to you before, I'm sure. This is the most important election of our time. Have you ever heard that about any election? But they just keep getting more important and more crucial. And it's not that we want to change the people who are there. We're going to change the minds and the hearts and the soul of the people who are there. And if they're with the Dignity and Worth and Justice program, then we can find our common ground because we will have shared values. So I just want you to say thank you to all of you for knowing your power, acting upon your beliefs, sharing your values. Because again, this is a time. The historian Toynbee wrote, and he did the histories of civilization, and in it he said sometimes, this is what happens in society. A society is formed, it comes together, and there is a creative leadership that allows people to flourish in the flowering of civilization for people to reach their fulfillment. Or they have an exploitive leadership who's just there to get power and money for themselves. Sometimes that happens in the same society. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah.
Okay? And what he said is, when that happens, it causes a schism of the soul, a schism of the body politic. It's not shared values. So we have an obligation to our founders, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, which I always take pride in talking about the Affordable Care Act and how that gave health care to many more people, healthy life, the liberty to pursue their happiness. Thank you. Thank you, Barack Obama. Thank you. And also the obligation that we have to honor the work of our men and women in uniform. We are the land of the free because we are the home of the brave. Their courage keeps us safe. And we owe them a future worthy of their sacrifice. But it's all about our children, our children, our children. When people ask me, what are the 3 most important issues facing the Congress, I always say the same thing. Our children, our children, our children. Their health, their education, the economic security of their families, and that includes the pension security of their seniors, a healthy, safe environment in which they can thrive, not get aggravated asthma because they have foul air in their neighborhoods, and a world at peace in which they can reach their fulfillment. So all of you, you are all doing the Lord's work. We are all doing the Lord's work. We're all indebted to you for that. And prayer is so important. I believe in the power of prayer, and I do believe that when we are sincere, coming together about it, we can find our common ground. You can't believe in the dignity and worth of every person and not act upon doing a good thing for those people. I want to share something with you that is really appalling. Mr. Butterfield's heard me say this before. I said to the Republicans one day, how can you be so cruel? I mean, really? Food off the table, out of the mouths, babes, all that. And they said, maybe it'll be clear to you about how we act if you understand this. This is a Republican member saying this to me. Reverend. He said, those people you care about, they're invisible to us. And we are indifferent to their needs. Was that clear enough for you? Okay. So, in a nonpartisan way, we all have to make sure that everybody, Democrats, Republicans, and the rest, understand that we're watching. That we're watching. That we're making judgments about their actions. Or, in friendship, making suggestions about their actions. So again, I think that they're giving people a raw deal. We Democrats have a better deal, better jobs, better pay, better future for our children, for our families, for women, in every way. And that when we look at our economic system, people criticize me because I don't come out and say I'm socialist. No, I'm not. I believe in our system that we have. But I do believe that it is an unfair system that is predicated on extreme wealth for some at the exploitation of others. And that just cannot stand. It just cannot stand. So it is about saying we have to reward work. We have to value work. And we have to understand that we're all in this together, and that the word community, which you are all about, community activism, that community has the word unity in it. So we have to try to be unified. And when we try to do that, sincerely, if they were sincere about that, we have to end up at a different place. Our founders, they had their optimism about this country. They gave us a direction. E pluribus unum. From many, one. Yes. They couldn't possibly imagine how many we would be or how different we would be. But they knew that we had to be one. And you, as people of faith and faith leaders, are our guides to finding that common ground, that spark of divinity, and recognizing it and giving us guidance on how to be one.
Good point. Good point.
So I thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. If it were, I wish that it weren't so urgent that we make our voices known. President Lincoln once said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. And when the people speak, when the people express themselves, it makes a difference. So in Congress, we can maneuver all we want and get so much progress. But without the outside mobilization, we'll never achieve the success that we are aiming for. But in order for people to have public sentiment, they have to know. They have to know what is at stake. So as you are messengers, you're ambassadors of shared values, and without being partisan or political in any way, but just in terms of this is what is at stake, how does that conform to our shared values? Because it's not just about issues or proposals, it's about values, it's about who we are as a country, and we are a country striving to be one. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for affording me the opportunity to share some thoughts. I bring greetings from the House Democrats, which are a majority of women, minorities, and LGBT. I'm very proud of that. A very diverse caucus sends you all greetings, wishes you well in your deliberations, and thanks you for your leadership, for what you have done, what you are doing, and what you will be doing. Thank you all very much. Aren't we lucky to have Reverend Sharpton?
Ms. Nancy Pelosi, give her a hand. Dr. King could depend on several people to organize, to fundraise, to critique, and to talk candidly with him about what could and should be done in the movement. Mrs. Coretta Scott King, who used to come every year here, used to say one of the ones that could speak to him in a way that others couldn't, because he could trust them, was Annona Clayton. Many of us know her as the grande dame of the civil rights movement because of her fashionable way of dressing and her beauty that has not faded at all because of her producing of the Trumpet Awards. But she is an activist at heart because she was always there to help keep the movement going. I wanted our young women to know what a regal woman really looks like that's still on the battlefield. And that is why we wanted on this 50th anniversary occasion to honor her. Some of y'all think that Meghan Markle's the first member of the royal family. I grew up looking at a royal princess in Annona Clayton. May we bring her forth and give her an award.
I like that introduction. That was really nice. Can you give me an invitation to the royal wedding? I'm mindful of the time, but it's been a good time. So, Mr. Chairman, I want you to know from me what a special moment this is. Reverend Sharpton, to be here at your convention and to see these wonderfully dedicated followers. It's a blessing for me. And I'm just going to make one or two remarks, and then I'm let Jesse spend the rest of the evening with you all. Before you meet this next man, though, I think, who's coming up, he, what I consider the poster child for voting. Right. When you see him on the TV, kneeling at the footsteps of the courthouse in Alabama, trying to get us registered. He didn't go there to burn the building down. He went there trying to get us registered to vote. And the blood is streaming down his face. If you see that, you cannot stay in bed on election day, because you remember that people did die and suffer to make it possible for us. So I was really dismayed this last time when I heard the national election, one of the lowest responses of African American vote just shattered my whole hope. You're going to meet him in a moment, and I'll never stop talking about the workmanship and leadership of Dr. Jackson, and they'll speak for themselves. But my joy was having them around every day when we worked for Dr. King. Now, Reverend Sharpton, these are now my own remarks. It's good to sit here and listen to these people pontificate. Give you words of wisdom. Talk about your dedicated support. But if you're just going to leave the convention and do nothing, what good is it? So I want to say to you, in a jocular example, a man went out to play golf. He put the ball on the tee, took a full swing, and of course he was playing and hoping to hit the ball. He was not dismayed by that failure. He took another full swing, Reverend, hoping to hit the ball. Instead, it hit a hill of red ants. He kept trying, and he failed. And finally he realized, if I'm going to win, I must get on the ball. You can strike and strike, but if you're missing the ball, you're missing the point. I urge all of you, get out there, take a full swing, hit that ball, and win, and support our cause. Thank you very much.
Sonoma Clayton. C.T. Vivian took blows, shed blood, and never stopped. It is because of his blood that we kept fighting and got the Voting Rights Act, because of his sacrifice.
I want to thank this man for being who he is. You know, when we talk about years, I used to look in black newspaper. That's years ago, we called it that. I would see this man, and because he was always in there. But it didn't look like the same guy. But he comes back again, and he's on the ball, and he's doing it again, and doing it again, and he will be our leader in a way that we now need it badly. And I'm very thankful that he's here.
C.T. Vivian. Certainly last but not least, C.T. Vivian brought Reverend Jackson into the movement in Selma. And Reverend Jackson and William Jones brought me into the movement. Reverend Jackson was appointed by Dr. King, head of Operation Breadbasket. And William Jones, who we memorialize here, was the head of Greater New York chapter. And they turned corporations from their policies of exclusion.
Yes. Yes.
He revolutionized the concept of where it was a one-sided economic arrangement where it was all profit and no investment, no contracts, no board members. He built an economic infrastructure that supported black media. In our media panel the other day, I talked about how we no longer have the radio stations, the newspapers we had. He built that as a bedrock, because if it wasn't a WVON, we'd have never had Harold Washington. If it wasn't a WLIB, we would have never had a David Dinkins. And he strategically did that. He expanded Dr. King's movement nationally. Dr. King was a global figure with a regional organization. Reverend Jackson helped to bring it north and organize and make it national. And when I was a kid, when I was 12, 13, they used to call him the country preacher. His sister called me today and said that Reverend doesn't have a suit. They lost his luggage. He just came in from Winnie Mandela's funeral. It says that he doesn't have a suit. He's going to have to wear a safari suit. I said, well, I never saw him in a suit and tie till I was about 16. He used to show up country. He used to dress like that all the time. He came in with a suit and tie. I almost didn't let him in Reverend Jones' office. I didn't know who he was. He ran for president in 84 and 88 against all odds. Registered more voters than any Democrat. Set the rules that led to Barack Obama. He has done so much for so many. Whether it was raising Mandela, when no one would raise it in those presidential debates, whether it was raising the idea of equal educational opportunities, whether it was corporate, as I said, accountability. He has meant that rock in the weary land. There were so many that took vows last week with Dr. King's day of assassination. But he was the only one still alive that Dr. King was talking to when the bullet hit. And I often think about how only the grace of God could have kept him going, to have seen that trauma and still not turn around and not back up, to take unfair criticism, to be marginalized by those you made mainstream. People sit in newsrooms that you put in the newsroom and write you out your own story. But somehow he kept going. And somehow he keeps going. And we wanted on this 50th anniversary more than anyone to know that if no one remembers who brought us in the King movement, who brought and tied in Brooklyn and tied in LA and tied it all together, even in Malcolm's Town where we were told you couldn't follow King, we followed Jesse. And we honor him today as our remembering 50 years of King, because he made King relevant to us. May you join us in honoring the founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson.
Good afternoon. Let me express how delighted I am, what joy I feel, being the presence again of Reverend Al Sharpton. My mother used to say on her dying bed, he ain't what he used to be, baby. He's little Al. You used to call him Big Al. He's little Al now. But you know, because of his age, Al did not spend the time with Dr. King. But Paul didn't spend the time with Jesus. The room where all of the other disciples put together. Dr. King would find joy in a very special way in the work of Reverend Sharpton. He's tireless, he's smart, determined, courageous, effective, and successful. You hold close, don't take him for granted. Minister here today, let's give him an amen, give him an amen. On your feet, show your love for Reverend Sharpton. On your feet, on your feet. Say, I am somebody. I am somebody. Respect me, protect me, never neglect me. I am somebody. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. This is a kind of homecoming for me in many ways. Today been around Brother Al and the shadow of Bishop Washington and Reverend Jones. Dr. King sent me to New York to organize Bread Basket, and I met Reverend Jones. He told me to come by his house. He was a big old 6'6", deep talking man, great Scott. I went by his house on President, and his wife came to the door. She was about 3 feet high and very petite. I said, Donna, please get your father to the house. She said, I'm his husband. I'm his wife. Miss Jones, please stand, give her a hand. She looked like she was 3 feet beside Bill, who was 6'6". So one of my memories of today, another of my memories is that Nona Clayton is a very erudite lady. Use big words, pontificate, stuff like that.
Big words.
I first met her in church. She was caught in the crossfire. I would never let her be relieved from. She flew, she had her own TV show. It was so rare, so fine, so smart, so tough. Man, tender heart, and she had flown overnight on the red eye to get to Atlanta to see Dr. King preach that Sunday morning. We came out together, and Dr. King got up and said, well, today, I'm not going to preach. One of my staff had to preach today, young man. She looked, she said, shit. She tried to contain it. I looked her right in the mouth when she said,
I got some real stories.
she was sitting beside Leah Lewis, John Lewis's wife. I saw it. She came to that. So no to say amen. So no to say amen. Don't lie to all you Christians. Say amen. Reverend C.T. Dippin, I was in seminary trying to finish my work, and we would talk on the phone every day. He was in Selma, and I was trying to buy time to finish that semester. He would say, you wait a while longer. So after that Sunday hit on the bridge, he called that night and said, you got to come on. So the next day we hit the road, and we went. Reverend C.T. Dippin was a masterful organizer, preacher, theologian, communicator. Even though he was going to catch a big hand for Reverend, 94 years old, a big hand for Reverend C.T. Dippin. As Al said, we just got in a few minutes ago from South Africa, went there to honor the life of Winnie Mandela. with your sisters in New York especially to have these services to honor Winnie. When I went to South Africa in 1979, Mandela and Becky and Sisulu and that group, they were in jail. Tombo and Becky and that group, they were out of jail, they were in exile. One voice in that darkness was that of Winnie Mandela. Before we even knew Nelson Mandela, there was Mandela's heart was beating. It was Winnie's heart. She took the heat. She was banned. She spent a year and a half in solitary confinement. We felt the need to go and visit her. Let me give you just a brief report because there are such parallels in our struggle. We both endured slavery, stage one. We both endured Jim Crow, segregation, they called apartheid, stage third, the right to vote. But now they have come out of slavery as we have. Out of segregation as we have, the right to vote as we have, but they're at the fourth stage. There are 55 million people in South Africa today. About 10 million are white. Blacks in South Africa are freer and whites are richer. They negotiated for the right to be free, not for the right of equality. They're free, but South Africa today is a black ocean, the white island in the middle of the ocean. All the investment comes into the island. 60 Mercedes-Benz dealerships in South Africa. Not one black South African has one. Toyota dealership. They have the name on the airport. It used to be Smuts Airport, now it's the name of Oliver Tambo. They're in charge of the airport without one airplane. The name outside of the shipyard without one ship. If you go from picking cotton balls or picking footballs, don't own the stadium, that's the next stage is involved. So beyond slavery, beyond Jim Crow, beyond the right to vote, access, the capital, industry, technology, and deal flow. That's this day. See, we had a black president. These ghettos are still abandoned. 54% of all African Americans make less than $15 an hour. The other 46% make more than 15, but they're debt slaves. They make more, but they spend more than they make. Repeat, if you spend more than you have and vote less than you have, that's suicide. If you vote less than you have and spend more than you have, that's suicide. Wise people must spend less than they make and vote all that they can. For example, now, the 4 million blacks in the South today are unregistered, 4 million unregistered. The ex-slave states still have the power to free the rest of us. 4 million blacks in the South today are unregistered. 2.5 million registered who didn't vote. The 2.5 million, that's who elected Trump. That's right. The 4 million high school seniors today are eligible to register and vote. If they vote in addition to marching about the killing in Parkland, Florida, they can have a new Congress. Not only will it make Miss Pelosi Speaker of the House, it'll make the blacks chairman of committee. There'll be about 15 black chairman of committees. That's really what's at stake, because if we take the Congress back, Maxine Waller will be chair of the House Finance Committee. Hello. Well, what's at stake is not just what it will do for Nancy Pelosi. If we take the House back, we have about 15 black chairmen of committees because they have seniority. And so, my friends, I want to express my thanks for this award and Al really for our kinship and our friendship of all of the time I've spent with my own 2 sons. I maybe spent more time with Al than any of them because of our, Yusef says, our spiritual connection. It's not by blood, but by spirit. Yeah. And I want to thank him for standing with me and my family down through the years and recognizing our struggle. There's no other movement in America like NAN today. Nothing like NAN in the country. Dr. King came back, his first stop would be right here. You are his people. You are his organization. You are his style of organizing. Al will fly to Sacramento in the morning to fly, preach somebody's funeral who got killed, and right back to New York the next night. He's tireless, and God has blessed him to have strength. And I want to say to you, Al, that when I first met you, I was 25 or something. You were about 24 yourself. I was 25 and Al was 12. I've been blessed to keep going. 1960, I was with Dr. King in conversation when he was killed. I went to jail in 1960, 57 years ago, trying to use a public library. The day he gave the speech in Washington, from Florida across to Maryland, we couldn't use a single toilet. We couldn't take pictures in lawn of the state capitals. Black and Latino soldiers had to sit behind Nazi prison wall on an American military basis in 1963. And since that time, we've made tremendous progress. But we've never lost a battle we fought, and never won a battle unless we fought. And when we fight, great things come our way. If we do not self-destruct through drugs and liquor and violence, we do not self-degrade. It's one thing to be degraded by the enemy, but to self-degrade is suicide. We believe that strong minds break strong chains. Of all the values Dr. King had, one of them was education. He finished high school at 15. He finished college at 19. He finished seminary at 22. He finished PhD at 26. Strong minds break strong chains. And when you do this kind of work, you don't always get the recognition you deserve. But it has to not matter to you. Because if you get what you deserve, you don't deserve it. And if you deserve it, you won't need it. As if you get what you deserve, you don't need it. And I've just been blessed to see a lot across these years. Spent a few nights in jail here and there, traveling around the world. The doctor told me a few days ago I had Parkinson's, which is an incurable disease by their standards, except I know somebody who can cure it. That doesn't bother me too much, except because I've been blessed. Born to a teenage mother on Haney Street in Greenville, but couldn't be born in a hospital for white people. Mama teenager, her mama was a teenager. Never knew my daddy. Jesse Jackson is my third name. I'm adopted. I've seen a lot though. I've seen the Great Wall of China. I've been to Japan. I've slept in the White House. I've traveled the oceans, all the continents. But I've not seen the righteous forsaken. Hold on. Hold on. Forward by hope. Not backwards. Hold on until the morning comes.
Reverend Jesse Jackson. I got a surprise for Jennifer Silver's home. Right, McKee we brought the Piperettes. They used to be the ones that would get us going in Saturday morning bread basket. That's where I learned to do Saturday Action Rally. We have them in from Chicago. They were Ben Branch, who headed the bread basket band. They used to call him the Pied Piper. He was standing with Reverend Jackson. Reverend Jackson introduced him to Dr. King when he was killed, as he was being killed. And Dr. King said, yeah, I remember Ben, Jesse, tell him to do Precious Lord, and that bullet went off. The Piperettes was named after him, the Pied Piper. And they're here to give a tribute and song to Reverend Jesse Jackson.
I'm so full right now.
Come on and walk with us just for a moment. As we take you on a journey.
A journey into living history. Your grandparents' history. Your mom and dad's history. Your history. And the history of this country.
And we bring you this history through music. Because we're singers. And we tell our stories through songs. Rockets, moonshots, spinning on the have-nots. Money, we make it. For we see it, you take it. Ooh, it makes me wanna holler the way they do my life. It makes me wanna holler the way they do my life. This ain't living, this ain't living, this ain't living, this ain't living. No, 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 no. Inflation, no chance to increase finance. Bills pile up, sky high. Set that boy off to die. Oh, it makes me wanna holler and throw up both my hands. It makes me wanna holler, throw up both my hands. This ain't living, this ain't living, this ain't living, this ain't living. No, 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 no. So what do we do when we see these images come right into our house? What do we do? How do we react? I know. Love is the answer. Love is the answer. Love.
My name is Brenda Yeager. I was born in Mobile, Alabama, raised on a farm in Locust Street. When I got about 15, I went back to Mobile, took a bus ride downtown on Government Street. When I got there, I was so thirsty that all I wanted to do was drink. I ran to the first water fountain I saw, and I hear this little Caucasian boy say, "Mama, that nigger's about to drink out of our water fountain." And the mother says, "Oh, you can't drink out of this water fountain, baby. Yours is in the back." Well, I knew conditions like that, I had to move up and get there. I had to go on it. So I left Alabama and went to Chicago, and there I met Patty Emily.
I met Brenda at an Operation Breadbasket choir rehearsal. Now, I didn't experience racism the way that she did, but you better believe that racism was in Chicago. I remember walking the picket line with my mama protesting the Willis wagons for the Board of Education. And when Dr. King came to Chicago to march, he said that Chicago was one of the most racist places that he'd ever been to. More racist than any place in the South.
That's racist.
So we joined the choir, and it was a 100-voice choir with a 21-piece orchestra. And Reverend Jackson was given the job to head the economic arm of SCLC.
Reverend Jackson organized Operation Breadbasket, where they would bring in work, jobs, business opportunities for black businessmen, and bringing that money back into the country and to the community.
And we helped elect the nation's first African-American mayors and congressmen. We went knocking on doors to get people out to vote. We sang on flatbed trucks in the rain to get folks out to vote. And now this is not something that somebody told us about. This is something that we did because we were there. There was Carl Stokes,
Richard Hatcher, Perrin Mitchell, Kenneth Gibson of New Jersey.
And we did that because we were there.
Right along with Reverend.
We were standing there with the picket sign.
Yes.
We were there. Smack dab in the middle.
Oh, yeah, we were there. Oh, yes, we were. Standing in the middle of it.
Come on now. Oh, we were there. Yeah. Down in the thick of it. Hand in hand together. Walking side by side. We were there. Doing what we had to do
To keep a dream alive.
Yeah.
Oh, to keep the dream alive.
Young, gifted, and black.
We were straight out of our mama's house.
Our courage intact.
We knew the time was now. Saturday morning meetings. Chicago Southside. And if we didn't have a car,
Well, we sure knew how to hitch a ride, 'cause we were there.
standing in the middle of it,
We were there. Down in the thick of it.
ooh,
Hand in hand together. Walking side by side. We were there. Doing what we had to do
to keep a dream alive.
Yeah, yeah. To keep the dream alive. And this is what would happen every Saturday. Ben and the band would play. Precious Lord, take my hand. And then the choir would sing. Down by the riverside, we'd rock the house of homecoming man. Afros, high dashikis down. Nothing could hold us back. Our faded jeans made the scene, 'cause we sure knew where it's at. 'Cause we were there. Standing in the middle of it. We were there. Down in the thick of it. Hand in hand together. Walking side by side. We were there. Doing what we had to do
To keep a dream alive. Oh, to keep the dream alive.
You were right there. This is what we do. We'd be walking, talking, singing, swinging, standing, demanding that we make a scene.
And every Saturday morning, Reverend would walk up to that podium and he'd give us a mantra to repeat over and over until we could see it and keep it in our minds. We spoke it to the universe. I am somebody. I am somebody.
I may be poor,
I may be poor, but I am somebody.
I may be on welfare,
I may be on welfare,
but I am
but I am
somebody.
somebody.
I may be unskilled,
I may be unskilled,
but I am
but I am
somebody.
somebody.
I am
I am
black,
black,
beautiful,
beautiful,
proud.
proud.
I must be respected.
I must be respected.
I must be protected.
I must be protected.
Somebody.
Oh, I am somebody. You can't tell me that I'm not. I say I am somebody. I can change the world with what I got. I am somebody. You can't tell me that I'm not. I am somebody. I can change the world with what I got.
I got the blood and the love of my ancestors flowing through my veins. These are the shoulders I stand up on when I'm standing up for a change. I have a faith and determination, change the course of history. I know I can make a difference just by showing up as me. 'Cause I am somebody.
You can't tell me that I'm not.
I am somebody.
Somebody I can change the world, but I got. I am somebody. You can't tell me that I'm not. I am somebody I can change the world, but I got. there was Rosa, there was Malcolm, there was MLK, saying it out loud. There was the soulful sounds of James Brown telling us to be black and proud. And country preacher inspired the pride for the right. He told me how to give a damn, because we are the children of the Most High, the great I am, because I am somebody. You can't tell me that I'm not. I say I am somebody. I can change the world with what I got. I am somebody. You can't tell me that I'm not. I am somebody. I can change the world with what I got. Now this presentation we take to schools all over the United States. And we want to tell our youth that this is what we did and this is what you got yet to do.
That's right.
We want to thank Al Sharpton, Reverend Al Sharpton, for inviting us today.
Oh, I love you so much.
We want to thank our mentor, Reverend Jesse Jackson, for starting us on our way. Thank you so much.
Correct.
Thank
Fight
you.
for Red.
God bless you.
I'm Patty
Fight for
Henry.
Red.
I'm Patty Henry. This is
Brother Lee Aker.
Thank you.
50 years after Dr. King's, let us bow our heads in prayer. Let us pray. 50 years later, we're still standing. Urge ministers who are here today to recommit the proposition of faith and finance. A lot of work to be done this year. Lord, have mercy upon us and see us through. Amen. Amen. Let me ask ministers to do one thing, just if you may. Many of you here today, through your personal, through your church, can give at least $1,000 to the National Action Network now. Give it, you can pledge it now. We said 4 million people to be registered. We cannot get a grant from Trump to register 4 million blacks. Talk to me, somebody. We can get a grant from Ford Foundation anymore to get a vote for this here. If we invest in it, we get the benefit from our investment. If you will commit at least $1,000 to National Action Network, raise your hand. You make the, that's the Reverend Holmes. You give it, raise your hand. Come on there right quick. I know we're in a hurry, but we can't run this money. Come on, your hands up, get it on your feet. Come on there right. At least $1,000 pledge or check today. The envelopes are here today. Come down right quick. Reverend Holmes, get up. I see you standing. You give at least $1,000. Give it or raise it. Come down. And your people give. You just ask them. Just ask them. They didn't give you all they're going to give you. They give you something else. You commit at least $1,000. Many of you can give it or raise it. McCann, he has money. Bill Jones' daughter, she has money. I said, but where's your dad? And she said, that nigga was my husband. You commit at least $1,000. Please stand. Come quickly. Don't look at me like something wrong with me. Come quickly. At least $500. Stand. At least $500. Don't let the spirit of can't possess you. Let the spirit of will do it now. Well, Thompson, you have a good job. Come on down. You finally have you're employed finally. Pastor, come on down. At least Reverend Scott. Please come quickly. Please come quickly. At least $500. Come quickly. I'm going all the way down to food stamp applications, so they ain't like you're getting missed in that. At least $250. At least $250. Shh. At least $250. It takes money to do it. Well, we're going to do between now and October. Couldn't have that $4 million down to 2 so we can put Trump on out back up in selling a hotel room. It's going to cost at least $250. $250 or more. Please come quickly. Brother, $250 or more, $250 or more. You give to some of you sisters. I know y'all got money. I know y'all got money. At least $250, at least $100. National Action Network, $100. Please stand. Just stand wherever you are. Let somebody at your table be the captain. At your table, let somebody be the captain. You give at least $100. Please stand. Some of y'all had Social Action Sunday. Bring that too. We're going to complete this process.
Reverend Holmes, $1,000. All of you that have a check can hand it to our chairman. If you are pledging, just let him know when, and I will have our gang member committee pick them up on the day that you say. Sisters in the Struggle, $1,000.
Nice.
All right. We're going around and find out. Anybody else? Come right up to the chairman. Pledge or cash or check. Richmond Chapter, Nan, 100. Come on, come on, come on.
Don't shout any higher than you live. Shh. Don't shout any higher than you live or give. Everybody can give something. Everybody can give something. Don't wait. Give as you've been blessed. You may give more than 1,000. Please come forward. Everybody, please come forward. And come quickly and enjoy your heart. Thank you, Brother Scott. See you, Scott. You had a bunch of zeros behind you. One. I like that. 1, 10 zeros.
We getting ready to go. I want Jennifer Jones Austin to come, and we're going in. Didn't we enjoy Reverend Jackson? Head on into Chicago. Let's pray for his strength and pray for his health.
We've had a glorious time.
Before she do that, let me remind everybody on April 26th, we'll be in Tallahassee with Reverend Holmes at the Remembrance, Restoration, and Rededication. And that's National Coalition for Churches for the Remembrance, Restoration, and Rededication. I'll be there along with others, Bishop Richardson, and of course Reverend Holmes called us in, Ben Crump, Martin Luther King III. All of us, please, that can meet us in Tallahassee.
Good afternoon. I asked Reverend Sharpton if when praying, Reverend Jackson gave the benediction. And I believe he did, but I just want to close this out with a word of thanks. Thanks to all of you for being here. Every year, Reverend Sharpton, this convention and this luncheon goes another round higher and higher and higher. We're so appreciative for you all. My family is so appreciative to all of you for keeping my father's legacy and his living alive, not just by being present, but actually carrying on the work of social justice. And I am eternally indebted to Reverend Sharpton for continuously pouring into me. This afternoon, I kept thinking to myself that the politicians have turned preachers up here. And as I thought about that, I thought about how my dad would often admonish those who came and said to him, "I enjoyed your preaching, Pastor." That it's one thing to be in the church and to be filled with the Spirit, but if you're not also convicted, if you don't also feel challenged to take a look at yourself and be reflective and think about how you're showing up, then the preacher hasn't done his job. We've done the job here today. Yes, you've been entertained. You've heard great singing. You've heard great speeches. You've heard sermons/speeches. But if you have not been convicted or challenged to look at yourself and think about how you're showing up in these challenging times, we haven't done our job. So we need to step up our game, go out there and do the work that needs to be done, just as the leaders who've come before us have told us today. Thank you all for being here. Let us go forth. Let's do God's work. Let's lift up the kingdom. Bye-bye. And I forgot to tell you, if you haven't gotten my book, you're more than welcome to see me, and we can make sure. It's a book about journeying through life and experiencing challenges, experiencing the presence of God in the moment. Consider it pure joy. I did my job, Rachel.